Hey everybody, bonjour tout le monde. Ben MacLean's my name. I'm a comedian from Nova Scotia living in Berlin. On m'a demandé il y a un mois à peu près si je pouvais faire une vidéo pour votre événement en ligne pour la Fête du Canada. Et à ce moment-là, je me suis dit, waouh, c'est une excellente idée. Ça fait des années que je suis le maître de cérémonie pour la Fête du Canada ici à Berlin. Et puis, tout à coup, nous avons reçu ces nouvelles horribles du Canada concernant les atrocités commises contre les peuples autochtones de chez nous. Et tout a changé. J'aimerais bien vous raconter toutes mes blagues, tous mes clichés du 1er juillet concernant, je ne sais pas, la Poutine, les gens de Terre-Neuve, notre ressentiment universel envers les gens de Toronto. Mais c'est pas le moment de faire ça. Et je comprends bien que en tant qu'homme blanc, dans la quarantaine, c'est pas le moment pour moi d'essayer d'apaiser l'ambiance. So you guys are probably thinking, wow, this is going to be an amazing comedy video. Hear me out. I do want to start by saying I love Canada, or I love what Canada wants to be. I was home in Nova Scotia earlier this year visiting my family, staying in a log cabin in the middle of the forest, and when I wasn't freaking out thinking that raccoons were going to attack me in the middle of the night, I was watching a lot of TV, a lot of Canadian ads, a lot of Canadian government ads. Many of you know these ads. You can tell that there's some bureaucrat in a room who had a list of all the different diversity categories in Canada, and they had to make sure that like every group is represented in a 30-second ad. So this ad had like a lesbian couple. There was a young woman wearing a hijab. There was a guy in a wheelchair. Like the whole video could only have been more stereotypically Canadian if all of a sudden a polar bear walked in the background holding a double-double from Tim Hortons. And I eat that stuff up. I'm like, wow, this is my country. This is what I've missed. But I think what recent events have forced me to accept is that I'm in love with the Disney version of Canada. I think a lot of Canadians are. One's Canadians living in Canada, especially Canadians living overseas. Like we think of Canada as this paradise where everything is fair and everyone is always considerate. And because we have so much trouble defining what we are as a people, our sense of identity often just comes down to rest of world bad, Canada good. And boy, has it made us smug. So the rest of the world right now, you folks have the right to point your finger at us because we're coming to terms with this very strange situation, incredibly unpleasant situation where we somehow managed to create a society that is known all over the world for being almost annoyingly polite and friendly, but a society that at the same time turned its back to some incredibly disturbing things that happen in our own backyard. It's like we're having to accept that you can't build a society just on obsessively holding the door open for each other. Now, I know a lot of you are gonna be like, this is political correctness gone wild. And I have a little bit of sympathy for you because I live in Berlin, which is like the performative wokeness capital of the world. People here change their Facebook profile photos to support a new cause like every 3 days. And I, as a very progressive gay man, I've been told here in this city repeatedly that I'm not gay enough, whatever that means. Like I wish people could go back in time and tell the kids in Nova Scotia used to beat me up on the playground that I'm not gay enough because for those kids, I passed the test. I know it's hard with all the different issues we're being forced to look at nowadays. It's hard to know where to begin. What I do personally is I reflect on where I'm from, how I grew up. I grew up in Nova Scotia. I've already mentioned it about 300 times during this video. Never bring up Nova Scotia because I won't shut up about it. I absolutely love the place, but at the same time I have to acknowledge that where I grew up is incredibly white. Like if you've ever asked yourself why on your smartphone there are those pink versions of all the people emojis, that's from my hometown. Like we are so white, we're pink. And I did French immersion, for example, at school. That was already incredibly exotic. People would be like, what's that language you're learning, young man? It's like, it's French. It's one of the official languages. What I'm trying to say is, in many parts of Canada, we have a lot of strengths, but diversity isn't always one of them. I had to recognize that when I was home a few months ago, and I was driving on the highway in Nova Scotia, and there's now a sign that says you're entering First Nations territory. And my first reaction, I was like, well, when did they get here? Like 4,000 years ago. That's what I found out when I did my research, but you would never know based on what I learned at school. Because back then, I remember we spent like 3 weeks learning about the French Revolution, but I don't think we spent a single day talking about the residential school system or the fact that 10 kilometers down the road from my high school, there's a Mi'kmaq First Nations community that has been there for thousands of years. Like we could have spent a couple days fewer talking about Marie Antoinette. Et je comprends, nous sommes tous fatigués, on vient de vivre une année infernale, nous sommes tous grognons, mes réserves de Coffee Crisp sont épuisées. Il y a des gens qui disent tout simplement, mais est-ce qu'on peut pas fêter la fête du Canada? C'est simplement la fête du Canada, on a toujours fêté comme ça. malheureusement, je dois vous dire une chose, on n'a pas toujours fêté la fête du Canada comme ça. Saviez-vous que la fête du Canada, comme on la connaît maintenant, elle est plus jeune que moi? Je sais que c'est difficile à croire parce que j'ai l'air d'avoir à peine 25 ans. But honestly, like, Canada Day in its current forms only existed since 1982. And my guess is you don't celebrate Canada Day the same way as you did back in 1982. Are you still wearing like fluorescent shoulder pads while chain smoking and listening to April Wine? Probably not. And my point is, just as we have changed since that time, we can also take a hard look at Canada Day and what this holiday means to make sure that it's as meaningful as possible for as many Canadians as possible. Now, normally when I do a video like this, I try to, put my social media accounts on the screen. I'm not gonna do that today. And instead, what I would encourage you to do is try to follow some Indigenous artists online. Follow Indigenous musicians, authors, even comedians, even crazy comedians like me, because we can't laugh about what happened, what we're finding out right now. But maybe through some of these artists, we can better understand what Indigenous people in Canada are experiencing right now as a result of what happened. I'm sorry, folks, that this has been so heavy. I know my job here was to give you something to laugh about, and trust me, I want to get back to a laid-back summer holiday as much as the rest of you, where we can just sit around and enjoy some time with family and friends, where I can just consume mass quantities of cake with red food coloring. You don't want to see me after I eat that much red food coloring. Like, start to hallucinate, start to think I'm Shania Twain. But before we get there, before we can do that, in all seriousness, we got a lot of work to do. So let's take the time to reflect. I hope sometime very soon to see you at a normal comedy show, which I promise is actually funny. It's a Ben MacLean comedy show, choreography, trapeze, surprise international guests, the whole kit and caboodle. You have to come and see it in person to know what I'm talking about. But until then, I wish you and your family all the best on this July 1st. I hope you're happy and healthy and safe. Take care of yourselves, et à bientôt.